want to help our people. I like to be in that kind of environment that we got outsiders trying to help us to help our people. That's what I like. And because I know as when you're Inuk and you're trying to work with, let's say, the correctional center, and then you're not really important. You're just but I would like to see it be we are important more like I know you guys must have talked about this before a lot, but this is just me like just start now. Um I can Dema, I just want to thank you guys for inviting me here, and that this is not my first time being an elder, but as an elder, I'm starting to be more convinced that I'm an elder now, especially after hearing Johannes talk to me. I still feel like I'm a little kid yet, but Johannes like made good sense when he was talking. So I'm and helping out like for me. I want to help my people, but how do I do that? I don't speak up. I don't be around people like you guys. I don't have that big wordings. I'm working now as an interpreter translator. It's the first time I ever had that kind of job, and I'm trying to learn. Even like the ministers, minister of this, minister of that. First time I'm hearing these names, and then while you guys were talking, it was like, okay, minister, whatever. Like I'm just glad to be here.
Thank you, Elder. Thank you, Elder Surak, and I can assure you our titles will go away, but your role as an elder will always continue. So thank you for those very important words. With that, I'm now going to invite Minister President Johannes to say a few words.
Nakamik Parliamentary Secretary Gary Andesangari, and certainly am excited and happy to be invited to this very important meeting. And thank you, Selma, for your opening remarks, and Minister Lametti. Certainly good to see you again, and certainly an important initiative coming from your department, the Federal Government of Canada. And as we all know, Indigenous peoples are highly overrepresented in the justice system here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and right across the country. And we have been raising this concern for years here in our province, and we are pleased that steps are finally being taken to help address some of those concerns through the funding announcement and the funding announced here today. The Nunatsiavut government will implement programs and services which aim to help address systemic racism and other factors that impact Inuit at all levels of the justice system, from within the system itself to violence prevention and community-based barriers and challenges. And we aim to provide culturally relevant resources within the justice system, as well as within Labrador Inuit communities, and to create safe spaces for those who are incarcerated. Systemic racism is one among many factors that contribute to Indigenous overrepresentation in Canada's justice system, and it is integral that steps be taken to begin to work towards equity and equality. Again, thank you, Minister Lametti, and Minister Sangari, and your government for providing this funding and for your support throughout this process. As we work together to reform the justice system so that better supports can be provided to Labrador Inuit. Nakamig.
Thank you, President Lamp. Hello, bonjour. It is a pleasure for me to join you from my home, the traditional lands of many Indigenous nations, including most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit. I want to thank you, Elder Salma, for starting us in a good way, and it is an honor for me to be part of today's announcement with the Honourable David Lametti, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, and Minister Asivek of the Nunatsiavut, Minister Lamp from the President Lamp from the Nunatsiavut government. I apologize. Today we're here to talk about how we're going to work with Indigenous peoples to advance reconciliation and in particular transform the relationship between Indigenous peoples and the justice system. We're going to do so in collaboration and partnership with Inuit, First Nations, and Métis communities, supporting Indigenous-led, culturally appropriate programs and services to provide community members with alternatives to the justice system. Tragically, Indigenous peoples continue to be overrepresented in our justice system, and the rates continue to rise. Particularly troubling, Indigenous women now make up more than half the population of women incarcerated in federal institutions. Tangible change is urgently needed. This is a complex and troubling issue that requires a multifaceted approach, one that integrates Indigenous community-based justice services and traditional healing methods to support the victim and offender and to restore community health. The Nunatsiavut government is a vital partner in these efforts. Its Department of Health and Social Development offers community-based programs and services that work to protect, promote, and improve the health and well-being of Inuit in the Nunatsiavut region. It takes a holistic, culturally appropriate approach to address the root causes of Inuit overrepresentation in the criminal justice system. This is a vital part of our efforts together to give Indigenous people greater responsibility for the administration of justice in their communities and ensure that they have access to a justice system that is responsive, fair, inclusive, and effective. We're proud to support the Nunatsiavut government's work to create a healthier, vibrant, and safer community for all Inuit in the Nunatsiavut region. On that note, I will hand it over to Minister David Lametti to provide more details on today's funding announcements. Nakumik, thank you. Merci. Mr. Lametti.
Thank you, Gary, for that and for your hard work. I'm fortunate to have you as a parliamentary secretary and to have you as my principal collaborator. Thank you. Hello, bonjour. Greetings from my office in Ottawa, which is located on the traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabeg Nation. Thanks, first of all, to Elder Salma for starting us off in a good way today. Elder Salma, I just have two comments with respect to your opening remarks. Thank you, first of all, for sharing your very personal experiences, and they're illustrative of why today is such an important announcement. But secondly, on a lighter note, I also agree with you that everything that Johannes says is very intelligent, and so I thank you for underlining that as well. Thank you, President Lamp of the Nunatsiavut government, for joining us here today from your beautiful land of Nunatsiavut. One thing we all know as Canadians is that we can't control the weather, especially in January, and so we are very grateful that you could be here with us today. We come together today as partners to renew our commitment to supporting culturally appropriate Inuit-led community-based justice services for the Inuit of the Nunatsiavut region. This is a critical part of our reconciliation journey, transforming how Inuit, First Nations, and Métis interact with the justice system. Les peuples autochtones ont subi et continuent de subir des actes individuels et systémiques de racisme et de discrimination à toutes les étapes du processus de justice canadien. C'est ce qui explique qu'ils soient surreprésentés dans le système de justice pénale en tant que victimes, survivants, accusés et condamnés, ce qui est tragique. The numbers are alarming and they are rising. This is why our government is focused on working with Inuit, First Nations, and Métis to address the legacies of colonialism, violence, systemic racism, and discrimination, and ensure true justice and equity for Indigenous peoples. One way is through criminal justice reform. For example, we know that mandatory minimum penalties are one of the reasons for overrepresentation in our federal institutions. And so, with the passage of Bill C-5 last November, we've begun to make long overdue changes to reduce the number of mandatory minimum penalties in the criminal justice system and remove restrictions on the availability of conditional sentences. We're also addressing these complex challenges through strong partnerships and investments that will bring about fundamental change. We must do more to support organizations that offer vital justice services and a better pathway forward for Indigenous communities. This brings me to today's announcement. I'm pleased to announce that the Government of Canada is providing more than $1.16 million in funding to help address the overrepresentation of Inuit in the criminal justice system in the Nunatsiavut region. These funds will help the Nunatsiavut government deliver on several key initiatives. Over $193,000 will be supplied over 4 years to support the creation of a new position of Inuit Cultural Awareness Educator. This individual will develop and deliver educational sessions to help criminal justice professionals in the province better understand Inuit culture and history. This will help build knowledge of the root causes of injustice and community-led alternatives to address crime. Over $28,000 is also provided to support the Family Violence Prevention Program to ensure the availability of trained resources to deal with prevention and intervention of family violence in Inuit communities in Nunatsiavut. With this additional capacity, staff will be better able to assist families that are healing from violence and work towards healthier, safer communities. Justice Canada is also providing $400,000 over 3 years to help the Nunatsiavut government contribute to the National Indigenous Justice Strategy. The IJS is a commitment made in my mandate letter. This work involves engaging with community members, key stakeholders, and justice system participants to identify issues and gaps and to find Inuit-led, Inuit-focused solutions. Finally, more than $547,000 will be delivered over 6 years that will go to the continued delivery of community-based justice services in Nunatsiavut. With this funding, the Regional Justice Services Manager will continue to improve the delivery of justice services to Inuit. They will continue to work with service providers and individuals, helping in access to prevention, diversion, and reintegration services. A portion of today's funding, provided through Justice Canada's Indigenous Justice Program, is part of larger investments our government announced in the fall 2020 economic statement and in Budget 2021. We committed $49.3 million to support the implementation of GLADU principles, as well as Indigenous-led responses to help reduce the overrepresentation of Indigenous people in the criminal justice system. Budget 2021 provided $27.1 million in funding to help Indigenous families navigate the family justice system and access community-based family mediation services. And we also committed $11 million in funding to support engagement with Indigenous communities and organizations on the development of legislation and initiatives that address systemic barriers in the criminal justice system. This includes collaboration on the Indigenous Justice Strategy. Ces investissements s'intègrent aux activités que nous menons pour faire avancer la réconciliation avec les peuples autochtones au Canada et répondre aux appels à l'action de la Commission de vérité et réconciliation, ainsi qu'aux appels à la justice de l'enquête nationale sur les femmes et filles autochtones disparues et assassinées. Ces investissements appuient également nos objectifs dans le cadre de la voie fédérale concernant les femmes, les filles et les personnes de LGBTQIA+, autochtones disparues et assassinées, dans le but de mettre en place un système judiciaire plus inclusif et plus représentatif. We remain focused on transforming our justice system and making it more just, equitable, and accessible to all people. And we're proud to move forward together with the Nunatsiavut government to offer a better, healthier, and more just future for Inuit in our country. Nakamik, thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Minister Lametti. Merci beaucoup. We will now begin the question and answer session. And before we begin, just a couple of reminders. Reminder to please virtually raise your hand to indicate that you would like to ask a question. Please press *6 before asking a question if you're dialing in. Nous allons maintenant amorcer la période de questions et réponses. N'oubliez pas de lever virtuellement la main pour poser une question. Si vous nous suivez par téléphone, veuillez appuyer sur *6 avant de poser une question. We will first take questions from video participants, then we will go to questions on the line. As usual, we will go with one question and one follow-up. Le format est d'une question avec un suivi. S'il vous plaît. With that, I would like to now open the floor for question and answers.
How do we volunteer?
Please raise your hand, and if you're calling by phone, press *6. So we have the first person we have is Marc-André Cossette. Marc-André, please, you have the floor. Okay, while we wait for Marc-André, Sarah Smelly.
Hi there, can you hear me okay? Okay,
Yes,
excellent, thank you. I wondered, are there statistics, do you have statistics on the rates of incarceration for Inuit people, either within the province here or across provincial or federal institutions? I understand we have statistics for Indigenous people, but I'm wondering about Inuit people specifically.
Thank you, Sarah, for that question. We would have information on federal institutions. I would come back to you on that. I don't have that information at the tip of my fingertips. We have in the process of, in particular, putting together Bill C5 and the statistical basis for the MMPs that we chose. We have a number of different statistics there, but we identified gaps in the statistical process, and one of the statistics gathering process, if you will. And one of the things that we're doing with Bill C5 precisely is to better our statistical picture with respect to the over-incarceration of Indigenous peoples generally, as well as more granular data with respect to Inuit, as well as Métis and First Nations. So the data is imperfect. We are working to improve it.
Okay, thank you. And may I ask a follow-up? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. President Lamp, I wanted to ask you, the RCMP has committed to addressing and ending systemic racism within its ranks. I wonder how you feel about that, if you feel that they will follow through on that, and why or why not?
Nakamik, thank you for the question, and most certainly one of the issues that is being experienced by Labrador Inuit here in Nunatsiavut, and we are more than ready. We have been ready to work with anyone, including the RCMP, and we have policies that are provided to the Labrador Inuit and other indigenous groups in Newfoundland, Labrador. But at the same time, the numbers, the overrepresentation is too high, even though we do not have numbers in front of us. And there's a couple of paintings behind me hanging on the wall, which are about the communities of Haberun and Nutak. And in 1956 and 1959, Labrador Inuit were dislocated from their homeland and moved to communities south of those communities, to places like Nain, Hopedale, Magovic, and North River. And so these Inuit who were moved to these communities, there were no homes, even though having been promised homes waiting for them in the southern communities, there was nothing there. And so there were issues, and so the trauma that Inuit experienced, and when they lived in the communities that that they were born in, there were no issues, no crime and anything like that. But some Inuit did not have any choice but to look for something to help them to live, and some did have to take where they did not have to take before, and so the RCMP were responsible for keeping the laws and keeping the laws that were made in St. John's. Our home communities, and so the overrepresentation is a very important factor to be monitored and to be looked at. And I always invite the federal ministers and provincial ministers also to come and see how our communities are being run, and how our people are being treated by those organizations that are supposed to help them and not really understand what issues that they have lived over the years. And two examples, relocation and residential schooling. And so where the LCMP have to try to help communities, I feel that Labrador Inuit are targeted, and especially those that are going back to the justice system and in incarceration, and these people are being provided with legal aid, and the lawyers that are trying to help them really don't understand what issues that the Labrador Inuit have, and there is no community-based help, and even where a lawyer has a client, they don't have a space to talk about what are behind what's going on, and so they meet in a hotel bathroom, and how how does this happen? And it should not be that way, and there's no programming for those who are sentenced by the justice system, and it is not just about the RCMP. It is about how, Labrador Inuit hold solutions that can better, help Labrador Inuit to help them with their well-being, their health, and their culture, and to have their own who speak Inuit to help them, to help the justice system better understand what factors lie behind, especially those that have been relocated or have gone through residential schooling. I could go on, but but I thank you for that question.
Thank you, President Lamb. I'm going to now ask Marc-Andre Cossette. Press star 6 to unmute, and you may pose your question and follow up, Mark. I think there may be some technical challenges, so we're going to now go to
sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you so much for bearing with me with all the technical difficulties. I appreciate that. Minister Lametti, my questions today pertain to military sexual misconduct. We learned earlier this week that the federal government is again fighting military sexual misconduct claimants in court, appealing a federal court decision that would give them more time, or give victims more time rather, to file their claim. The Trudeau government has publicly and repeatedly promised to support victims of military sexual misconduct. So why then is it again fighting them in court?
Again, thank you, Marc-Andre, for the question. As a government, we have taken the question of sexual assault and sexual harassment in the military to be a top priority, and we're working through. I'm working with Minister Anand with respect to the Arbour report and implementing a number of the suggestions there as they pertain to the Justice Department. But for the decision itself and going in front of the court, I'm going to sadly turn you to Minister Anand to speak to that.
Okay, and just as a follow-up, I mean, it is the Attorney General of Canada that is pursuing this legal action. I understand that the Department of National Defense might be involved, but hundreds of potential claimants are seeking an extension to file their claim, and surely you can imagine how difficult it must be for them to come forward and relive what they experienced. What message do you think your government is sending to these victims by seeking to block their claims?
Again, I'm going to direct you to Minister Anand on that. The Attorney General's name is on every action that the government takes, and acting as a lawyer. But in this case, I will direct you to Minister Anand.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Marc-Andre. We are now going to go to Matteo. I think I can't see the full name. I believe it's Similaro.
Yeah, Similaro, you got it. Thank you, Matteo Similaro, Canada's National Observer. So we just heard the gentleman, so I didn't get his name, talk about how Inuit are targeted in the province, and some of this funding is really great. I mean, this role of the educator, I think will be beneficial, but it makes me question that the onus of education and accountability is once again falling upon Indigenous peoples and the Inuit to educate and to kind of fix the institutional systemic racism. And when the onus and accountability are on the Inuit, then it just feels like it feels unfair. So the question is, how might this government hold the RCMP and federal penitentiaries to account? How will they show accountability to the actual institutions and not make the Inuit do it?
I'm happy to take that question first. From where I grew up, Matteo, it's Chimilaro, but that's we won't quibble on that. The point here and the point of a number of our different programs is to work with Indigenous leadership and Indigenous expertise, Indigenous communities across Canada, in this case with the Inuit from Nunatsiavut, and to bring their experience, their expertise to the table and allow them to lead, right? The whole point of this kind of funding is that it's Inuit led, and I appreciate that there is in a sense, greater responsibility that's placed on Inuit leadership, Inuit communities, and experts. But it's what they're asking for, and indeed, it's what we haven't done in 150 plus years of colonialism in Canada. We have tended to opt for top-down solutions drafted in Ottawa or other provincial capitals, the national capital or other provincial capitals, and that hasn't worked. So what we are doing is I think recognizing the very legitimate desire of, in this case, the Inuit, to empower themselves and to be empowered and to provide the resources, and then work with them and listen and understand what is being proposed. So it is a major shift. We're doing it as a government in a variety of different places in my portfolio, for example, where an Indigenous justice strategy or an UNDRIP implementation or a whole host of other areas, we are partnering with Indigenous leadership and basically working with Indigenous peoples in leadership roles, not just in sort of policy taking roles, but actually policy making roles. And so that, I think that's critically important, and it's an important step here. And in each case, the funding that is going out under this rubric is being used differently by different Indigenous peoples. In this case, again, the Inuit of Nunatsiavut have decided what is important to them and how they want to move forward. So I think this represents an important positive shift. I don't know, President Lamp, if you wanted to add to that.
Nakamik, Minister Lametti, and most certainly it is very important that we have to look at history, and most certainly where the province of Newfoundland Labrador did impose policies to Labrador Inuit that did not fit Labrador Inuit way of life, and most certainly where we as Inuit have always looked at the well-being, the health, and the culture and the language of Labrador Inuit, and so we have not had over the past 150 years, as Minister Lametti says, had not had that support, and we unfortunately have had to wait for over 150 years to finally start to be heard, and more certainly to look at examples like where the Labrador Inuit communities did have community elders who kept traditional law for Labrador Inuit, and that traditional law certainly played a major role in the lives of Labrador Inuit, and if there was anything going on, Inuit had to come stand up in front of community elders to be accountable, to be responsible for what they had done, and that was taken away by new organizations when 1949 happened, and the province of Newfoundland did take away the responsibilities of community elders, and I know that we cannot take that back today, but we certainly can look at how in today's way of life, how the Nunatsiavut government using self-determination, including Labrador Inuit determining for themselves of how you can make life better for yourselves or your children or your grandchildren, and that is very important for the future, and if our communities are going to make life better for its residents, the Labrador Inuit have to be given that self-determination, that ownership that is very much needed to run their affairs themselves. And so I certainly agree that it's been overrepresentation, and most certainly how do we stop that, and how do we get back together as Labrador Inuit together in our communities, and how do we work together with the federal government of Canada and the provincial government of Newfoundland Labrador. And like I said, the best way is for you to come and see the poverty that Inuit are living today. And at times when you are so poor, you have to do what it takes to feed your family. And so poverty is just one example where food insecurity is prevalent. High prices, of items being bought in the stores in Nunatsiavut, and not having the means of obtaining a boat or a snowmobile to help you get out on the land and to find that fish, the partridge, the seal, and even just to go out on the land and to move away from the communities that are causing stress, and so that is just an example of how Labrador Inuit being given that opportunity can go back to how they can help Labrador Inuit themselves, and Labrador Inuit helping both the federal government of Canada and the provincial government of Newfoundland and Labrador, and the Nunatsiavut government. And I believe that any Indigenous group within Canada, have their ways taken from them, and so their way of controlling, not so much controlling, but to be one with nature, the land, the wildlife, the fish and the birds, and with your own people, your children and your grandchildren, and I believe that that opportunity has to be given back to Labrador Inuit in this case.
Thank you very much, President Lamp. I know we're. I think you've highlighted the issue for self-determination, and I think that's the journey that we're all on with you. Unfortunately, this is all the time we have today. So if there are more questions, we will wrap up today's session, but you're welcome to contact us at media@justice.gc.ca. In the meantime, as we close, I'd like to invite Elder Surak to offer a closing prayer.
Closing prayer.
We could unmute Elder Surak.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay. Okay, start again. I just want to say a quick, big thank you to you guys. Because when I started working at the correctional center, I worked there for 3 years, and then when I had to leave that job, I didn't want to leave that job, but I had no choice because there was not enough money to help me. To the pay wasn't not enough. And then I hope in the future that when somebody else gets hired, that they'll be able to get that money that they can function with their family. And I'm really glad that you guys invited me. And I hope this money goes to the right places. Like a lot of times when we're working in places that people give you the money, but it's always leaking somewhere else. Meaning that like I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just want to say thank you again for helping our people to be able to help other people, like spreading out the help that you guys going to be funding us so that we can help other people more. I guess this is what I'm trying to say. I just want to close by doing the Lord's Prayer in Inuit. I like to say more. I like to do more. I like to be involved more now that I've heard you guys talking. I just going to do the Lord's Prayer and then I'll be gone. Okay. Good. Okay. Nalia kuti atatavut hilami. Atit itutauli naligoni highlovely. Pijimayat pinetauli nunami sulu hilami. Ulumi picked up in it to Nichivi. It really would is my own naked solo about. It literally would is my own navy up it. Down with Pitnata. Amen. I'm after listening to you guys, it feels like there's a lot of doors just opened and lots of hope and lots of possibilities. And it's a good overwhelming feeling. Because when I left that job, it felt like I shut the door on the inmates that I worked with, whether they were Inuit, or Haluna. I worked with all of them at the correctional center. And then, like I said, when I left, I felt like I closed the door on them. And then, like with the programs, I had no choice but to leave and close those programs. And it feels like now, after listening to you guys, I feel like there's a lot of doors open again. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Elder Surak. Thank you, President Lamb, and thank you, Minister Lametti. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks to all of you. It was very moving. Thank you.
Yeah, nakamake.
Nakamik.